Hello, lovely people. You're welcome back to my channel. My name is Eunice. In this video, I'll be sharing with us how I made this beautiful inbuilt corset bustier you see right here using the bust caging technique. This is really beautiful. Can you see how well structured the bust area is? It is well structured and neatly tailored. I used inseam finishing technique for this outfit. You can see how neat and beautiful it is on the inside. In this video, I'll be showing us in details how I was able to achieve this beautiful corset blouse. This video is actually divided in two parts. The skirt part, which is a basque waistline, as you can see the full dress on the other side. The skirt part is a basque waistline with drapes at the front. I have already made a detailed video on how to cut and sew the skirt part, and it is already up on my channel. So in this video, we're concentrating on the upper part of this outfit, which is the inbuilt corset bustier, and this is the pattern drafting video. So after this video, I'll also be uploading the sewing video, so it's quite a detailed video. I hope this is something you are interested in learning. Please make sure to keep on watching till the end. And please, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, kindly click on the subscribe button to subscribe. Ensure you put on your notification bell so you receive a notification every time I upload a new video. And also kindly share this video with your friends and family. Like this video. Thank you, and let's get right into the video. For this project, these are the materials I'll be using. This is a sequence lace fabric and I have 3 yards. I'll be using this for the skirt, the sleeves, and for the yoke. Already I told us I have done the skirt tutorial already and it is up on my channel. And this is a shiny crepe fabric. We'll be using this for the upper bodies. And here I have my doll face satin. I have 4 yards of doll face satin. We'll be using this as the lining. And then this is a haystay, black haystay. We'll be using this to create stability on the upper bodies. Here I also have my Regilene boning. It's a sewable boning. I'll be using these two bonings, the Regilene and the plastic boning. I'll be using the plastic boning to support the Regilene boning. So I'm going to be doing double boning technique to give our corset that nice stability. Okay, and then this is my fiber. This fiber will be using this to flesh the bust area. That's after we had done caging the bust. So with that being said, the measurements we're going to be using will appear. I've drawn out the box we'll be using to draft our pattern, and this part that is facing me is the center front and the other side is the center back. So I labeled them respectively. To determine the width of the box, I use the biggest measurement divided by 2, and that is 38 inches, which is the bust measurement, divided by 2, and that gave me 19 inches, plus 2 inches, that's 21 inches, to determine the width of this box. So this box is 21 inches. I got the midpoint of our 21 inches, and that's 10.5. You can see I ruled the line there, demarcating the front from the back. So now the first line I have here is the shoulder line. The second is the chest line. And to get the chest line, divide the bust measurement by 6 plus 2.5. You have the chest line. As you can see, I marked it across the front and the back. And then next I have the bust point, which is the nipple point, the underbust point, the waistline, and then the corset length. For the corset length, the simple thing to do is to get your front half length and add a maximum of 5 inches to that measurement. Now, this is it. The half length of my client is 17.5 inches. I added 4.5 to make the corset length 22.5. So I said a maximum of 5 inches. So you can do less than 5, you can add 3, you can add 4, you can add 5, but of course a maximum of 5. So don't use more than 5. If not, your corset will be too long and you won't be able to sit. It can be really inconveniencing. Okay, so Now for the back, we have the back chest line, which is the same as the front. Then the back half length. The front half length I'm working with is 17.5, while the back half length is 15.5. So this is because we have our bust in front. So of course the front and back are not the same. So that's a difference of 2 inches. Then the corset length at the back, all I did was to mark the back half length and I measured the same 4.5 inches and I came down by the same 4.5 inches. So now the back length corset length is 20 inches while the front corset length is 22 inches. I hope we get that. So that's a difference of 2 inches, okay? So next I'm going to mark the shoulder measurement divided by 2, placing my tape from the center front. The shoulder measurement divided by 2 is 8. Then I mark 3 inches for the neck width on the shoulder line. Here where I have the shoulder measurement, I'll come down by 1.5 inches for the front shoulder slant. I came down by 1.5 inches for the front shoulder slant. Then I'll come down to the chest line and enter the same shoulder measurement divided by 2. I'll mark it here and then connect with a straight line to the shoulder slant. Now that this is done, then the next thing I'm going to do is to curve out the front armhole. And to do that, from the chest line, I will go upwards by 3 inches. I marked that point. At that 3 inches point, I went in by 3/4 of an inch for the armhole. And then on the chest line, I'm going to enter the bust measurement divided by 4. And this is it. So I'll connect all the 3 points together. Now for the back, I'm going to mark the shoulder measurement divided by 2 here, also on the shoulder line, and which is 8 inches. Having marked 8 inches, I'm going to mark 3 inches for the neck width. And then I'm going to come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slant. The back shoulder slant is 1 inch. And then I'll connect it to that neck width I have of 3 inches. Then on the chest line here, I'm going to enter the shoulder measurement divided by 2 as well. I'll connect with a straight line to the shoulder slant. So we now have the back armhole. So I'll get the midpoint of this line from the shoulder slant to the chest line. I'll just fold my tape into 2 like this, and this is the midpoint. At this midpoint, I will go in by 1/2 of an inch. And then on the chest line, I'm going to enter the bust measurement divided by 4 here. And then I'm going to connect these 3 points now. And you see, I'm making sure to connect from the tip of the shoulder slant to the 1/2 inch and then to the bust measurement I have here on the chest line. So now this is the back armhole. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark the bust pan line, which is the nipple to nipple divided by 2. The nipple to nipple is 8 inches divided by 2, that's 4. So I'll mark this across all the lines excluding the chest line. I marked on the bust line, on the bust, all the way down to the corset length. And this is what we have. So as you can see, I've marked the 4 inches. Next, I'm going to be doing a dart intake of 1 inch on both sides of the waistline. Okay, that's on the waistline. I'm going to be marking 1 inch on both sides of this bust part line. I'm doing 100% dart intake. Then from this bust point line, I came down by 1 inch, and then I'll connect our waist dart. Can you see? I came down by 1 inch and I've connected the waist dart to the waistline. And then I'm going to also connect the waist dart to the corset length. And here we are. You can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is to enter the bust measurement divided by 4 on the bust point line. That's on the bust line rather. And that is 9.5. I'll mark 9.5. Then I'm going to skip the underbust line and get to the waistline. Now, the waist measurement I'm using is 28 inches. The actual waist measurement is 30 inches. I subtracted 2 inches from it because this is a corset blouse we're making. So you need to cinch the waist, like snatch the waist a little. So I'm subtracting 2 inches from our actual measurement. So that gave us 28 inches. So 28 divided by 4 is 7. So I'll mark it here on the waistline, and then I'm going to add that intake of 2 inches. Please take note of this. So it means that the waist measurement has changed, okay? So I entered the waist measurement divided by 4, which is 7 plus 2, that's 9. So I haven't done that. Next thing I'm going to do is to mark the upper hip measurement. But a very simple way to get the upper hip measurement is to introduce the hip line. Now we don't have the hip line on this pattern. I'm just going to introduce the hip line so that we know what we'll have at our upper hip. Okay, so now the hip line of my client is 27 inches. So you can see I came down from the shoulder line. I marked all the way to that 27 inches. So you can see I'm extending the line downward. So this new line I have here now is the hip line. That's the round hip line, okay? So on this hip line, I'm going to enter the hip measurement divided by 4. As you can see, I've marked it there. So now I'm going to use my ruler to connect from the waistline to that hip line. Can you see? So I'll just connect from the waistline to the hip line and can see what I have. So automatically you can see it has now given us the upper hip measurement on the corset length. So this way, this connection will just show us where this measurement will stop. So you can see I have already struck out that line. That's the additional measurement I added because we don't need that. We just use this to get our upper hip measurement. Okay, so next I'm going to tighten the underbust. On the underbust line, I entered the underbust measurement divided by 4, which is 7 inches. Then I'm going to mark what I have left there on that line. And you see, I have 2 inches left. So this 2 inches is what I'll be using to tighten the underbust. So on this side, on the center front side, I marked half inch away from the dart leg. And then on the side front, I marked 1.5 inches away from the dart legs as well. And you see, so I'll go ahead and use my pencil to connect it into the dart. So you want to blend it into the waist that we have here. You see this side? So I'm going ahead to blend it into the dart legs. So I'll take this, just watch carefully what I'm doing. So you can see that we have tightened our underbust. So on this side, I'm repeating it because it needs to blend into the dart leg. And you see? So I'm connecting it this way all the way down to the corset length. So now that we have done this, can you see? So you can see that on this other side, our dart has reduced. And you see how it reduced on this side. So I'm using my green marker pen to mark it out so that we'll understand which line we are working with. So you can see now this is now the line that we're going to work with, the one with the green. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to draw out the cups. So from the underbust point to the 1 inch I came down, I'll make sure that my curve touches the 2 points before drawing it out. I'll do the same thing here on this side. You see? So that we have drawn out our cup and have properly tightened the underbust. I'm also going to use my marker to just highlight this point so that we know which line we are working with. And you see, so this is it. So we have tightened the underbust. So the next thing I'm going to do is to introduce the overbust line. A very simple way to get the overbust line is to measure the distance you have from the bust point to the underbust point, and in this case it is 3 inches. So you can go up with the same 3 inches and then you have your overbust line, or you add half inch depending on how covered you want the upper part to be. In this case I marked exactly the 3 inches, so that means I went up from the bust point line by 3 inches. I can see I've drawn out the line and I labeled it overbust. Okay, so I haven't drawn the overbust line, so I'm marking a neck width of 3 inches. So from the neck width, I'm measuring to the shoulder tip, and then I'll get the midpoint. That's from the neck width of that 3 inches to the shoulder slant, and then I marked the midpoint. So from this midpoint, I'm going to connect it to the bust point. Can you see how I use my straight ruler to connect to the bust point. Okay, so next we're going to tighten the overbust. On this overbust, I'm going to mark half inch on both sides of the line, and then I will connect it to the bust point. So I'm going to use the part of my ruler that is not too straight and not too curvy as well. You can see. So I'll just connect the points like this. So here we are. So the next thing I'm going to do is to tighten our yoke. I'm going to be doing 25% yoke tightening for the yoke, because this yoke is going to be a scalloped yoke and it's going to be queen ant neck. Okay. So now this is what I'm doing. Can you see the dart I have here? So I'm connecting the dart all the way to the shoulder tip. So you can see that we have tightened our yoke. So having marked this 1 inch, now on the armhole area here, I'm not going to be replacing back that 1 inch. I'll be replacing half of it, which is half inch. Can you see? So I'll be replacing half of it. I'm not replacing up to 1 inch. I measured the dart and the dart is 1 inch, but I replaced half inch. So that's why I said I'm doing 25% tightening. This is so that the yoke sits very well. So you can see after replacing it on the armhole here, I redrew the armhole. So you can see how I'm striking out this armhole to show that we're not going to be cutting on this armhole. So this is now, the one I just drew is now the new armhole. Next, we'll move over to draw out the sweetheart neckline. So from the chest line here, I will go up by 1.5 inches on the overbust dart. Can you see the chest line? I'm going up by 1.5 inches here. I'm using the overbust dart as a guide. So I went up by 1.5, and then I'm going to bring in my armhole curve and connect it to the center front. Can you see? So we have this side of our sweetheart neckline. I'm going to also use my curve to blend it into the armhole on the other side. So you can see I flipped it to the side that is more, that is giving me what I want. So you can see this is it. So now we have our sweetheart neckline. Okay. So from this center front, I will come in by 1.5. And then here on the shoulder slant, as you can see, I'm marking 3.5. That's from the center front. And then I'll connect it this way. Can you see? So this is going to be our yoke. And I've labeled it yoke. So we're going to have this space in between at the center front. That's that 1.5 inches space. And then the yoke will not get to the middle. That's just basically what I am trying to say. Okay, so next we're going to mark our bust dart, which is a difference of 2 inches, the difference between the front half length and the back half length, and that's 2 inches. So I marked it, I came down on the side here on the bust line. I came down by 2 inches and I marked the dart. You can see I connected it to the bust pan. And this is me just creating that triangle shape we have at the side that shows that we have a dart, so that by the time we close the dart, we're not going to have shortage at that side. Next, I'll close the overbust dart. So can you see how I'm closing up the overbust dart? So these points have shifted. You can see that the shoulder slant has also shifted, while the overbust line too, that's the sweetheart neckline, has also shifted there. So all I'll need to do is to bring in my ruler and blend up this line. Can you see I've connected back into the shoulder slant, and I'll also use my armhole curve to blend up this. So this is basically me truing it. So you don't want to cut it just like that. You must close it up and then blend up all the points so that it just goes smoothly. Okay, so you can see this is what we have. So that's basically it for the tightening. So next we'll move over to the back and draft out our back before we come back to cut the front. So for the back here, from the center back, I'm marking the bust pan, which is 4 inches. And see, from the center back, I marked 4 inches and I marked it across all the lines up to the chest line. I'm also going to be doing a dart intake of 1 inch, just like I did for the front. So I'm going to mark 1 inch on both sides of this bust pan line. And then I'll come down from the chest line by ½ inch, and I'll connect the waist dart to that ½ inch mark I came down by. Okay, and then I'll also connect it to the corset length. So this is basically it for the dart at the back. Next, I'm going to enter the bust measurement divided by 4, which I already have on the chest line. And then here on the waistline, I'll enter the waist measurement divided by 4 plus the 2 inches that, remember, I'm using the new waist measurement. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do also is to introduce the hip line at the back so that we can get the over, that's the upper hip line. So I introduced the hip line here. I marked from shoulder to hip line by just measuring the what I added in front. So, and now this is the hip line here, and I marked the hip measurement divided by 4 here. And you see, don't worry, it's going into the front piece, but it will not affect anything. We don't need that line. So having marked the hip line, I went ahead to connect from the waistline to the hip measurement. And you see, from the waistline to the hip measurement, and now we have it. So I'll connect from the waist to the chest line also. So you can see where our hip measurement, that's the upper hip measurement, now is at the over over hip line, that's the lower waistline or the upper hip line, whichever one you want to call it. The corset length is going to stop on the upper hip, so that's the over hip line. So you can also refer to it as the upper hip line. So you can see where the measurement stops. You can see it just stops exactly at the tip. So you just want to you use the hip measurement just to be able to get your upper hip measurement at the corset length. So if you want to, you can add half inch at that point, but in this case I'm not adding anything. Okay, so next I went ahead to mark out the neck depth for the front, and I'm using a neck depth of 1.5 and the neck width of same 3.5 like I used for the front. Then from the neck depth, I came down by 2 inches. And then from the center back, I also marked to the dart leg. So you can see I'm connecting our keyhole. Just watch carefully, you will understand what I'm doing. So we're going to have this opening at the back. So we have a keyhole yoke. Okay. So cut out that part. The part I labeled cut, that's the side that's giving our keyhole. And then the other side is the yoke. So this yoke has a keyhole. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is to try to make this dart not too sharp, because we want to have our center piece separate from the side piece at the back. So on both sides of the dart leg, on the upper part, I just opened up by quarter inch on both sides. So you can see I'm replacing back that quarter inch on both sides, that's half inch. So you can see I replaced it back on the chest line. Okay, so that's it. So at the down part, I'm also going to do the same thing. I'll just open up the dart by quarter inch on both sides. This is so that the dart is not sharp. You know, at the back, it needs to be, you don't want it to give a flary look. So that's why I'm opening up the dart by quarter inch on both sides. So that's half inch. And you can see I'm replacing it on the side too. You can see I've also replaced it on the side here. So I canceled the first side line. So that means I'm cutting on the second side lines. If you watch carefully what I'm doing, you will surely understand what I have just done. Okay. So now from the center back, I'm coming in by 2 inches. This is for the opening we're going to have at the back of our corset, because we're going to have eyelets sitting at the back. So this is it. I'll be cutting out that part. So these points are where I'll have the eyelets. That's why I drew these circles. Okay. So the next thing I'll be doing is to create the modesty panel that we're going to have at the back, which is a back cover. So here I measured the length from the chest line to the corset length, and I have 11 inches. So I'm going to cut out the fresh paper that is going to be 11 inches in length. Can you see it starts from the chest line to the corset length? And then the width of this paper is the bust pan, which is the nipple to nipple measurement, that's 8 inches plus extra 4 inches, so that's about 12 inches. This is so that it covers the back well. So as you can see, I placed it underneath my pattern, and you can see I am measuring it to show us that it will go from one side of the back to the other. So I'm going to trace out the first dart leg. This paper is not going to be straight. You have to trace out the first dart leg because it will be stitched to this dart line. So tracing out the first dart leg, and I'm tracing on that alteration I did. That's the dart expansion I did. Remember, I went out by 1/4 inch on both sides, so I traced out exactly on that line. So this is me going ahead to mark it out. So you can see this is what the pattern, the modesty panel will look like. So I'll go ahead and cut the shape. So you can't cut this straight. If you cut it straight, it won't fit in there. You need it to fit in well so that you don't have any side looking like it's wider than the other. I hope you understand that. So this is what our modesty panel looks like, and I'll be cutting this on fold. Then when I'm cutting on my fabric, I'll cut it on fold. That's the straight part is going to be on fold, and the part with the dart, of course, that's the side that is going to be open. Okay, so this is me just using my arrows to indicate the part that is up and the one that is down. Okay, so that's for our pattern drafting. So now I'm going to close the overbust dart. I'm just going to close the dart here so that we can cut out our patterns. Okay, so this is it. So like I already said, I blended up the shoulder. I'm just reblending it, just checking all the points that I need to do, and this is it. So first I'm cutting out this part which is not uh part of our measurement, and then I'm going to take out the neckline. Here you see I'm cutting out on the sweetheart shape, and then I'll go ahead to cut out the yoke. I'm showing out this part so that we'll see what I am cutting out in order to avoid any confusion. So the point where my yoke stops, you can see I marked that point. This is so that when we are attaching the yoke to the bustier, you make sure that the yoke stops at that point. Then I don't take it further than where it should be. And you can also see that the armhole, I cut on the new armhole. And then I'll go ahead and cut the that lines following the green marker pen I have here. And you see, so I'm cutting on the green marker. So just cut, cut, cut. So like I said, I want us to see what I'm doing so that we can actually understand very well. So this is the corset length here. So before cutting out the corset length, let's go ahead and close the bust dart first. So I'm just cutting straight on the demarcation line. So for the bust dart, can you see how I'm folding it? And then I'll place it over the bust line. You see, just fold it well. And then I'm going to use my masking tape to tape it down. So having done that, I'm going to now blend up the side. So you can see that the dart has shifted. That's the sideline has shifted. That's the essence of that triangle shape we have. And then you can also see at the bust area, you can see it's pointy. So I'm reblending it. You don't want to leave it pointy. So just blend it up and trim out the excess. Make sure that it is well rounded. Okay. So I'll go ahead and cut out the side so you can see how our measurement, can you see how the side just goes in? So we have the upper hip measurement there. I'm just separating it. So this is what we have. So we now have our front patterns, and this is our yoke. Can you see? So you can see where the yoke will stop. You can see that. So then I'll bring in the back pattern so that we can also cut it out. So I'll cut out the armhole first, then the sides. I'm cutting on the new side line I marked. I'm not cutting on the previous. So you can see. So this is the corset length, and here we have it. So next I'll cut out the shoulder slant, the neckline, and then here's our keyhole. So I'm cutting out the keyhole. So this point where I have the keyhole too, we need to take note of this point because this is where we're going to make sure that when we are stitching the yoke, it will stop at this point or it will start at this point. Okay, so this part is the space we're going to have at the back, so we are throwing this away. Okay, so I'm just going to indicate up, use my arrows to show the sides we're joining together. So now I'm cutting on the alteration line, not on the main dart line. Can you see? So this is what we have. So we now have our two back pieces. So this is the center back. The smaller one is the center back, while the other one is the side back. So this smaller one is the one that will carry our eyelets, and that is the one that will be cut on fold. Okay, so this is it. We now have all our patterns, and you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is to shape the sides, and you see that the side is pointy, it's pointy. So at the side here, I'll just go up by 1 inch to give it that nice curve at the down part, and you see, so by 1 inch, and then I'll use my ruler, my curved ruler like this, to blend it up. And here we are. So I'll trim out the excess. So I'll also use this to blend up the side back. So you can see it's quite simple. So I've done that already. So this is what our patterns looks like. So you can see I haven't closed the side dart, the bust that you can see now, the front and back pattern at the side, they are matching up and they are very equal. So you can see everything, it's well and beautiful. And this is our modesty panel. Okay, so the next thing to do is to transfer to fabric and add all the necessary allowances so that we can start stitching our pieces together, which we are going to be stitching in our next video. So our next video is going to be on the sewing part. So this is a pattern drafting video. Our next video will be the sewing part. So we have come to the end of this video. If you have learned something from this video, please make sure to like this video, share this video with your friends. And if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please click on the subscribe button to subscribe. Ensure that you put on your notification bell so you get a notification every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching this video. See you in my next video. Bye.